Listen. Can you hear it? The birds do their sing-song every morning about 4:44 until like 5:05, like 20 minutes. Sometimes it's longer. Yeah. I've been up since 3:30, and sometimes I get up when the birds do their sing-song. But this morning, I was very clear in finding my peace and going to resources. And this is live. It's 5 in the morning after about an hour and a half of journaling and reading. And I've been going through a lot of transformation and really deeper thoughts and conversations and imposter syndrome. And I'm staying with it so that I can flow the new answers. And to be totally transparent, this last week, I had a lot of anxiety attacks. Lots. Like in a row. And so I charted it to see when they would happen. What was I eating? What was I doing? Just like maybe hours before. Some of those anxiety attacks were like right after I had like really such a great day. With like services with Bella. Like it was July 3rd and I had just had like 4 appointments back to back. And then afterwards I just crashed. And I took a bath and then I just sobbed and just had this anxiety attack. And it was just like ugly cry. You know, that ugly cry. And then I was drained. I took a nap, I woke up because I had one more appointment late at night, like 8 o'clock. And she absolutely filled me up. And I was totally transparent with her with how the day was going. And she's an old returning client and hadn't seen her in 2 years. And so we did a lot of really great catching up. And she gave me the biggest hug because she said she didn't realize that I went through these things and how much she appreciated my vulnerability. 2 days later, I have another anxiety attack. And it's because I got the gift of having 4th of July weekend totally like free of Bella, and I decided to do a staycation retreat, just doing whatever I wanted to do, such as reading, making foods, replanning like this next stage, and starting over and like clearing what I'm really about now. And I always like to make space, just like getting rid of stuff that isn't there anymore and resetting my space in my hexagram. Doing yoga and doing a lot of things where I'm not thinking and just being and let it pass. This week I had several other like mini breakdowns or anxiety attacks. Some of them was like right after I dropped off Bella in the morning. And so last week it was like more in the afternoon, like around 3:34. And then this week it's been like around 8:30 to 10, and then where my body crashes. So during this time, it's like I've got to go to new resources, new perspective. And so I got this book. Where did I put it? Wealthy and Well Known. It's by Roy and AJ Vaden. So I started reading it, and I also finished the other book, Who Not How, by, oh goodness, I would forget his name right now. But he writes 10x is better than 2x, and then one of my favorites, The Gap in the Gain. And it like helped ground me and rest again. And then I also started rereading some of my Chinese face reading books. And then in my drives, I started listening to The Big Leap. And I bought The Big Leap years ago. I just never got to it. You know how you do that? Because then you bought like 3 audiobooks in a row. And then you just forget. Yeah. So then I had to catch myself like, Twee, are you binging on information, trying to solve things again instead of being with it and like not fixing? Because I'm really trying to undo that, unlearn that, and undo that pattern. It's a big pattern for me. Going into like infobesity, going into hypervigilance, and the book When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. It really has helped me, and just Pema Chodron's teachings in general. And I knew that I had to return to that. Every time I think fall apart, I'm like, okay, it's time to surrender and return to that. And today, I had a huge breakthrough in this book, Wealthy and Well-Known. I also started working with a coach, and her name is Mia Moran. She's from Plan Simple. I've been part of her group off and on for the last 3 years, and I decided to invest in myself with this Flow 365 because I know I can't do it alone. And for some reason, whereas before I would be able to break through and push through, right now my stress resilience is down, and I keep going in cycles, and I can't afford to be in these cycles, these loops of 3 or 4 days of losing my confidence and not knowing direction and just drifting. And I know that I need help. Only I can solve my problems. However, I get there faster with someone else, or they can see the problem. Because if you're the container, you cannot see the container. With all these experiences through the years, I know that I am different now, and I can't do the same things I did before. It reminds me of Simon Sinek, who I absolutely love too, and he writes the book Start With Why, Infinity Wars, or the Infinity Games, and so many things. And he said that the first book, he was really good at writing things like on a plane. But then after that book, got all the success, and he had all these booking appointments for like speeches and such. And in the second book, he's like, oh, I'll just do the same strategy. Go on a plane. He would like book a flight to somewhere that was like 2.5 hours, take a little break like at the place, and then go back for 2.5 hours. But then he found that he couldn't, because he had traveled so much that it wasn't the same anymore. And that he hated being on the plane. And so he re-strategized with because he needs accountability and to be anchored into that time to write. So he hired someone to kind of like babysit him, or she could come and do whatever she wanted before a certain time. And he found the perfect person, because at that time he was like living in New York, and so she was an artist or like a performer. And so she had the mornings available, which is like when he was working often. So she would just come, so that sometimes like they wouldn't even talk at all. Sometimes he'd just ask her some questions. She would do her work and maybe prepare some things for him. But he needed someone to babysit him. And so that's how I feel right now. I need someone to babysit me and handhold me and hold me accountable and in the direction I want. So I invested in this Flow 365, and Mia and I did our goal setting. And I'm really actually bad at goal setting, because I didn't know how. I was never really taught. I taught myself with books and stuff like that. But there's a difference between teaching yourself with books and then doing it with someone. You go so much faster because of the laws of entrainment and body doubling, and then just thinking out of your head, because the only person that answers yourself is yourself, and you can't solve the problem, right? And then you just go crazy and nuts. Before, I thrived on that because I thought I could solve the problem, and it was more egotistical. But you learn, and you need to get. I needed that to get to this, and I kind of had it was right after I had an anxiety attack that I had this talk with her. And so it was very vulnerable. And she helped me walk through things where the business that I had wasn't because of the social media posts. It wasn't because of these other things I thought I were doing, but it was like in this July, just getting back into work again, I had doubled what I did in June already. Yeah. And just total transparency, I just started working again in April because of my Crohn's condition and healing. And I only made like $450 in April, and like $740 in June. And in July already, the first week I made like about 780. And then this week so far, I've made about a little under 700. Yeah, and in 2 weeks time span. And it was because of the networking that I've done in group settings and like showing up, and they booked appointments right away. Yeah, and making certain phone calls. And so as I was going to these networking events, I started the book, The Big Leap, and he talks about this thing called the upper limit. The upper limit. How you, after a series of success, you would have sabotage, and how he did it, and how all the clients he had, and he cited examples, like my upper limit, and one of them has to do with your health condition. So like a person, for instance, would get these migraines after he had intimate relations with his secretary. And so that was like the guilt and like this crash and stuff like that. And so for me, it's my Crohn's, how I would get these flares and after a certain time of business. And I associated with perhaps allergies, stress, all these things. But my Crohn's, it's releasing, right? Like I can't absorb anything. And it's because I believe that maybe I need to give everything away for things to come back. Like there's so many things I wrote in my journal about it. But it's my fear of success and more so, more so my fear of success than fear of a failure. And it's if I can sustain it, and some of the truths that came up with it. And this is where your cognitive dissonance gets into play. And so some of my upper limits, and I journaled about it, is knowing, my upper limit is that I'm discovered as a fake, that I really don't know what I'm doing, and that I'm just lucky. And some of this has like kind of evolved with the QNRT that I'm doing with my integrative chiropractor healer at Omega Functional Health. And she's really helped me with this neural reset. And one of those things is the subconscious belief that people discovering that I'm a fake. So it's a different form of self-doubt. It's a different form of imposter syndrome. And I know this like from Chinese medicine with the elements, like water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, how it seems very similar, but it's very different. Like vision is very different than purpose and legacy and really doing your work and serving. But it has like a very similar like theme to it. However, it's a different essence. And so this people thinking that I'm a fake and that my powers aren't real and that I'm just lucky are these underlying beliefs that pattern me and like run me, program me. So it's really a huge breakthrough, but it's nothing like that I'm going to be able to solve and everything's going to be great right away. it's a dissolving. And then from that dissolving, I know that it will come back. And I've had so many of these breakdowns before. And so working with Mia kind of helped me like put together this puzzle piece. Like this morning, the real part of this breakthrough is in this branding. And Rory and his wife AJ wrote this book where it really helps you discover your uniqueness and get clarity on your brand, what you represent. And so the pattern that they find in most people in discovering this uniqueness and who to serve is, I'll just read it. What we discovered is that for all of us, you are the most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. You are most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. That's the secret. That's the shortcut. Because every brand wants to get the shortcut. And that's the pattern. So he cites Lewis Howes. And Lewis Howes has this great podcast. And I subscribe to his podcast. And I love Lewis Howes. I have his book. It's been a while since I've checked into him. But he has this podcast called The School of Greatness. The School of Greatness. And he called Rory after Roy had dismantled his other business, and his wife had just got fired from her job, and they were like in an instant, like with no plan, nothing. But God doesn't make mistakes. Sometimes these clearings happen to make space for the new energy and the new greatness that you're supposed to do to serve. And so Lewis Howes calls like where he said his podcast has really taken off, and Lewis and Rory met like years ago at an event, and they just kept touch here and there. But he said that his podcast had really taken off, but yet he's like worked more than he ever has. He's getting all these opportunities, but he can't filter, and he's stressed out, and for some reason he felt compelled to call Rory, and that maybe Rory can help him. And so they work together, and because of their work together in 2 years, Lewis actually like 10 times his results because he got focused. And diluted focus equals diluted results is what Rory teaches. And they did a few strategies. And so I'm going to read to you beyond that, where Lewis got really clear on how to serve and what his uniqueness is, okay, and how to break through the wall. So there's a whole scenario about breaking through the wall on it. But he wrote this in really such a short way. The chapter was like only 8 pages, but he did it so concisely that walked you through it, that helped me walk through it. Okay, and so I highly recommend it, even though I just broke through on this one thought. And it's taken me really like the last 3 months to get these little steps to like connect them to get me to the next stage, right? You can't go from like 1 to like 100 steps in one step. Okay, so let's go back to Lewis and how he finds out the person he once was. So if you aren't familiar with Lewis's personal story, his dream was to play in the NFL after becoming an all-American collegiate athlete. Lewis landed a spot playing professionally for an arena football team called the Tennessee Valley Vipers. However, in the second game of his pro career, Lewis crashed into a wall while making a diving catch and broke his wrist. In one play, his entire lifelong dream and the countless hours spent training for it were gone. After his football career ended, Lewis struggled to find direction with the next chapter of his life. All he had ever thought about was playing football, and once that vision evaporated. He didn't have a plan. He had moved to LA and was living in his sister's couch while it dawned on him that he needed a mentor or coach or some sort of school he could attend to teach him what to do in a situation like this. He started to wonder why there wasn't more accessible ways for everyday, ordinary people to learn the principles of success, why there wasn't a school of greatness. That was the impetus that I'm a horrible reader. Impetus that led Lewis to start his podcast, The School of Greatness. He didn't start it from a place of being the guru. He started it from the place of being the student. He wanted to interview successful people about the lessons they had learned on their path to the top. And that's how the show was born. You see, finding your uniqueness is more than just narrowing in on one platform or business model. It's also about zeroing in on exactly who and what type of person your personal brand is going to serve. Let's refer back to some of the biggest personal brands in the world and how they got there. Brené Brown was dedicated her life to studying and solving the issues of shame. Dave Ramsey had built a 9-figure business by focusing primarily for more than 30 years on helping people get out of debt. Tony Robbins was said that a big part of his life's purpose was to help people break free from pain. When we then posed the question to Lewis, what problem are you going to solve for the world? After hours of back and forth dialoguing with Lewis and hearing about his own personal struggles, he eventually blurted out, I guess I've spent a huge part of my life learning how to overcome self-doubt, and how I want to spend the rest of my life teaching people how to do the same. Boom. There it was. Self-doubt. Self-doubt is the problem Lewis solves for others because it is the problem he struggled with himself. It was the journey that he had been on his entire life. It was the path that had personally walked down. It was the path he had climbed. And remember, you are the most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. Now it's your turn. What problem are you going to solve for the world? So for me, with my intuition and my sensitivity and doing spiritual work, I've doubted if my powers were real. And that maybe I'm just dreaming, and maybe it's just like this play, this make-believe stuff. So it's doubting if my powers are real, and then just also surrendering and trusting in the process, and returning to myself. Because every time I fall like this, I'm like, man, I failed again. Are my powers real? Are all these tools that I'm doing working? If they were working, why did I fall again? Every time though, and why did I have another breakdown? You know, every time it's so I can get silence and still and return to myself, finding these ways and actually anchoring in more on my spiritual path and trusting that and really knowing it, because the more consistent I do with it, instead of being like shiny object syndrome, then I conquer it. And in the breakdown, there's breakthroughs. And that's what my first meditation, the Lotus Mudra meditation, did. And I cite that in it. In the breakdown, there's breakthrough. And that's when I sat down for like 3 months and I meditated a lot. And then I formed this meditation with like all these hand movements, and I still use them today. Yeah. And it's so woven and like beautiful woven, like 13 minutes. And so I had to ask myself, what challenge have I conquered? What setbacks have I survived? What obstacles have I overcome? What tragedy have I triumphed over? So I wrote these things down in my journal today, and then the steps. And yeah, it's a huge breakthrough. And from here, I can be more clear and focused. So I hope that this morning ramble and my groggy voice because I seriously did not rehearse this. I'm just filming it, and I hope that this helps you find your answers. And so I've been working on it for a while, and I keep sculpting it. So from the questions that he asked, my saying as of this moment is, where did I write that? Well, this is my journal. You see all this? It's this craziness. But it's flowing spaciously with gutsy harmony, serving soulpreneurs. So I'm serving soulpreneurs to flow spaciousness with gutsy harmony, because balance is different for everyone. It's bullshit. And with me and my Crohn's, something for me to help digest my food and my thoughts. It all is like in the guts, and so I'm always healing my guts, and that's something that I'm always gonna have to work on. But I'm glad to, and not to like contract, but to have spaciousness. And so I'm flowing spaciousness, where I'm not cramming everything like in a day. And harmony just feels really good for me, because in life, it's about harmony and the rhythms and the seasons, and serving soulpreneurs. So that's moms, singles, whatever, but living their soulful path. And why? It's because I know how it feels to be alone, hopeless, believing your powers are fake, and afraid of being found out. Yeah. And so from this, I'll sculpt it a little bit more and refine it a little bit more. But that's the initial, just brain dump and getting it out of my head. So what is your purpose to live with that and walking down that? And where's this breakdown that you're having? Is creating a breakthrough in these anxiety attacks? What is the truth that really needs to be revealed? And what's it really mean? And where's the upper limit in that? All right, so cheers. You're not supposed to totally solve it. You're supposed to let it evolve. And that actually does take more time. So I hope the puzzle pieces come to you, and you don't have a problem. You have a puzzle. You don't have a problem. You have a puzzle.